A nigga like me, man, I love the game. I love the hustle, man. I be feeling like one of them ball-playing niggas, you know? Like Bird or Magic or something. Yeah, you know, a nigga got dough. A nigga could leave the league. But if I leave, the fans still gonna love me, man? I get love out here in Harlem, man. I done sold coke on these streets, man. Hash, weed, heroin. As long as niggas is feeling it, a nigga like me can hustle it. That's my gift in life, eh? You know? What? The fuck you laughing at, B?
You, man. Funny, man. You a hustling motherfucker, man. For real, baby. You fucking killing me, man.
Well, you know me, baby.
There's a documentary that came on PBS called Slavery by Another Name. There's also a book called Slavery by Another Name. And it basically outlines and details basically how brothers after slavery were caught into a web that was pretty much the same thing, where they would be called sharecroppers, and they would have to work for a former slave master usually, and that former slave master would offer them, you know, a place to stay on the quote unquote, basically the same thing, plantation. And you know that let me say this, a lot of plantations haven't been shut down but maybe 40 years at the most. A lot of them haven't. So what you see with a lot of these people that are talking about this is a historic plantation, slave plantation, they probably were working as sharecroppers up until maybe the 60s and 70s. I'm just being honest. Now, you may be like, okay, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, sharecroppers are honest living. I mean, they weren't slaves, and they had their freedom. They could leave if they wanted. But hey, at least, and that's the thing with a lot of up north brothers and sisters, and not just up north, but people from anywhere but the South. They tend to come with this ideology that, hey man, y'all stayed in the South, y'all backwards niggas, y'all could have left this, that. And this is the thing, it's a few things. Number one, a lot of black people, me being from the South, I'm gonna tell you this from firsthand experience. A lot of black people was like, fuck them, I'm gonna stay, they ain't running me no motherfucking well. We own property down here, we own land. There's an area going, once you go from Montgomery going into Mississippi on Highway 80, go get a map and look at it. All that land pretty much going up through there, most of that land is black owned land. A lot of it, I ain't gonna say most, but a big chunk of that land is owned by black people. So black people tend to own land in those areas. Dallas County, you know, those counties out there, black people, black farmers, a lot of that is black people that own that land. It's not just white people, although there are some white people. So you had people that wanted to tend to their land, and a lot of black people, what they would do is they would run and leave even if they own land. Now, under certain circumstances, it's probably for fear of death, so I'm not knocking people. But what happens is that land got eminent domained out to some white person, or it got, you know, they sold it for pennies on the dollar, right? And then white people owned it. There was a time, I think black people owned, I don't know how many millions of acres of land, but now they don't own that. And a lot of that was in the South, right? When you listen to Dr. Claude Anderson. But what happened, and I'm getting to the point. What happened with a lot of people is that they decided to go out here and start dealing with, you know, going up north and going to different places and stuff like that. And they wound up leaving their land, as I just said. I'm trying to do two things at once. Let me stop. So when they would leave their land, what would happen is they would, a lot of their people that couldn't leave their land would be stuck in the South, working as sharecroppers or working, you know, and a lot of them didn't feel like, okay, I don't know anybody up north. I don't have any money. I can't just move up there. I got kids. That's why a lot of people stayed in the South. It wasn't that we were afraid to move to up north, or but I ain't gonna say afraid. It wasn't that we were just like, yeah, I guess we loved the South or loved the conditions of the South. A lot of people had kids, old family members, and so just saying, hey, let's all up. That's like right now, if I tell everybody, hey man, let's up and move to Africa. How many of y'all would really be able to move to Africa right now? Because that's what probably a lot of people, that's how insurmountable it probably seemed to a lot of people. How many of y'all right now, I wouldn't even say Africa, how many of y'all, yeah, I would say Africa, because back then people were actually more black people were earning more. So yeah, I was less. So it would be about the same equivalency. So how many of us right now can move to Africa? Not many. You get what I'm saying? That's a foreign country. I mean, that's a foreign continent with a bunch of countries. How would we be able to move there? There are 195 countries in the world. So how would we be able to move to this area like this? We wouldn't. A lot of us wouldn't. And so I'm making that point to make a point. The documentary Slavery by Another Name was basically dealing with the idea that people would be locked up under vagrancy laws, or they would put them in jail, a lot of them, and they would basically be put in and be slaves, basically. And it would say, well, legally we can make them a slave because they did this or did that. Kind of like what they're doing today with the jail to prison to school to jail pipeline, which I have that's a real complex subject for me. It really is. It's not just evil, although it is evil to form a business and try to, basically for bad schools and follow them and siphon those people into prison. That's not good. But the point I'm trying to make is this. The thing is this, when you look at prison and when you look at what they were doing in the early 1900s up until like maybe the 60s, that was still slavery. And there are people, there's a Vice documentary that I'm going to add on here. And I want you to watch this because this is pretty much the end of the video, but I wanted you to watch this and see. I'm not going to put the whole video in there. I'm going to edit it. But I just want you guys to see what they were doing to people back then. You got people that were pretty much in slavery. And they tell you, if you run, we will catch you and kill you, like it's damn 1832. And they would catch people. They caught a dude and hung him right in front of his kids for his kids to see, to scar them for the rest of their lives. You see your dad hanging up on a rope for days, leaving them up there for the kids. That's going to terrorize those kids. You're a little child. You're helpless. The best way, they say a lot of times, elephant's a powerful animal, but when they catch them when they're young and they do certain things to them when they're young, when they get older, they won't even try. Like, that's just the way it is. And in certain instances, that can be a good thing. And in certain instances, that could be a bad thing. If you got a little 3-year-old and you spank his behind, when he gets older, he's going to respect you, even though he may be 6'5", 250 pounds. He's going to respect you as his father or mother. Not because you spanked him, but because now he's gotten of age and he understands you were doing it for his best. Now that's a good situation. Whereas, when you hang a person in front of their kids and let them swing, for days on end, you're deeply psychologically ruining them. And that trauma goes into their DNA. And I honestly believe we passed that on, in that type of trauma people don't recover from. It takes years to recover from that type of trauma, where people are, seeing their family. I'm just being open and honest, right? Now, the final point I want to make is, let's look at, what they said about the Supreme Court. Because see, this is the issue, right? Okay, let's say we got free in 1865, most black people, right? And that was a small fraction of black people that were being, herded into this sharecropper system that wound up either being slaves through sharecropping and being treated a certain way, or they were slaves through vagrancy and locked up over bullshit, trumped up charges, and worked in slave mines until, they'll be dead in a year. You 17 years old, they catch you standing on the corner somewhere with your homeboys, they lock you up, and you next thing you know, you working in a slave mine, and next thing you know, you dead. That's what happened. right? So you see that, and then you wonder, like, how in the hell could this not have been, these families have not gotten paid any sort of reparations for this bullshit. They have not gotten anything. People fought this all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. Why? Because let's understand what I'm saying now. It wasn't that they refused to hear the case for reparations, period. They refused to hear the case for people that were held in slavery until the damn 60s. People's family members locked up until the damn 60s as slaves, and if they were told if they try to leave, they would kill them. And you got people to this day that still, that are still living, that ain't even old yet. People ain't even on Social Security. They just 45, 50, 60, that remember when they were a baby, a kid, a little toddler, they would, how white people would tell it. I mean, I'm not saying this is what you should not think. That black people, when you come to the South, are so intellectually behind you guys, and we're so slow that you can make a fool out of it. I think the music industry kind of proved that that's bullshit. Method Man proved that when he was in an interview with Michael Rappaport, and they asked him, he talked about it. He said, man, like it or not, these brothers in the South are businessmen. That's why IQ has bullshit. That's why I don't like the IQ argument. They don't give a fuck what you think about an IQ. You can have a higher IQ. Are you a businessman? That's what matters. That's why motherfuckers come over here and out-earn a lot of people with IQs from nations with IQs of 78 and 75, and coming over here out-earning white folks with an IQ 25 points higher. So that's bullshit. So don't worry about it. But that's a whole nother video. But the point I'm trying to make is, watch this clip. Look at how they treated black people. Look at how they wouldn't allow them to leave the plantation, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it, because if the Supreme Court were to ever hear that case, it would really put them in a precarious situation, because the families of the people that kept those people just until the 60s, they're gonna lose. They have to lose. You have wronged some people. But how the hell does it even have to go to the Supreme Court? Oh, that was 100 years ago. No, the fuck it. What if it was just 20 years ago? What would you do then? You see what I'm saying? They still would not want to hear that case. That's the problem I have with it. The Supreme Court didn't want to hear the case. So that's why I don't, in my mind, to be completely honest with you, I don't even think if it was all liberals, they wouldn't have heard that case. See, because I'm going to tell you something. Most of them going to be white. And white liberals, unlike what we think and what we've been told, really don't want true black empowerment. They want diversity. They want, let it go. Don't hurt don't shake the apple cart. Let people, it's in the past. Let's just move forward, and I know that sounds like a conservative, but a lot of liberals have that mindset or ideology. I wouldn't even say conservative. I would say a right-wing Republican, because I mean conservative, it depends on how, it has many applications. Not just that you want to preserve the damn, days of 1840. Yeah, that's not just what conservative means. A lot of black conservatives on the internet right now, they ain't with that bullshit. So, but I just wanted to put this out. Check this video out. Thank you. Let me get ready to take my ass to work. Thank you.
My daddy, the whole family, was held against their will. If you did leave, they either come get you or have somebody kill you, whatever. Jerry Dawson, he lived around the same place we lived on. He left, they went and got him, brought him back, carried him right down there from his house, killed him, hung him up in a tree, castorized him and hung him up right from his house where his children, everybody could see him. I'm pretty sure it was 55, 56 when this happened.
Most of us think that the end of the Civil War in 1865 closed the chapter on slavery in the American South, but that's far from the truth. Over the next 100 years, generations of black Southerners were forced to labor against their will. This new form of slavery happened in the shadows of the first half of the 20th century. And even though civil rights movement began advancing racial equality in the South in the 1950s, these practices continued secretly, making it a difficult history to prove. Today, there's one woman who's dedicated her life to finding this lost history of Black identity. She's been called the slavery detective of the South.
We're currently in Louisiana, about to meet Antoinette Harrell, who specializes in finding cases of essentially modern-day slavery. We're really deep in the South right now. It's super swampy and super rural. I was actually born in Boston and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, like early on in my childhood, but I've never been out this far deep into Louisiana. I'm very interested in connecting with Antoinette and learning more about her work. Hello, Antoinette. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Antoinette was born and raised in Louisiana, and even though she lost her leg to cancer a few years ago, that hasn't slowed her down from what she sees as a mission of justice, tracking down and verifying cases of slavery and abusive labor practices that happened after the Civil War. Sometimes she gets leads from newspaper clippings, old FBI reports, or recorded testimonies, and sometimes she just gets a phone call.
I got scared because I seen how they beat some of the boys. They beat people to death in there.
Mike, I appreciate you not taking this story to the grave with you. I know it hurt, I know it's very painful, and the state of Florida can't pay you all enough, but I'll be in touch with you shortly.
A few of Antoinette's investigations have been used in court cases for reparations, though sometimes the end goal is simply to give people knowledge of their family roots, which for a lot of Black Southerners is something that slavery erased.
Let me first tell you how I got started with this. Researching my own family history. My family was held as slaves. Well, in 1863, my family was emancipated, and my family did become sharecroppers. Robert Harrell became a sharecropper under the system of sharecropping. The planter and the newly freed former slaves came into an agreement. I will furnish you with the seeds, with the land, a place to stay. In return, you would give me a portion of the crops. Well, not everyone did the right thing.
Although sharecropping was technically legal, the practice was widely abused by white landowners who used debts to keep African Americans tied to the land that they once worked as slaves. Sharecroppers didn't pay rent, but they didn't own any property, and today, historians agree sharecropping was just slavery by a different name.
So many former enslaved Africans had nothing. They had no choice. At the end of the year, you owe me. No matter how hard you work, you are told, sorry.
And those cases relate directly to your cases today.
Right. After slavery, these are like 1921, 1930, 1940s to 50s, and some of them to the 60s.
Antoinette's very first case was May Louise Miller, a woman who was held as a slave with her entire family in Mississippi until 1961. Though May passed away in 2014, Antoinette took us to see one of her brothers, Arthur Miller.
May and Arthur being two of the older sisters and brothers, they remember a lot. It took a long time before Arthur really opened up and talked.
We lived on, I don't know what would you call it, but something like a plantation to me. It belonged to several different white people. They all was family, I guess. And you couldn't leave. And if you did leave, they either come get you or have somebody kill you or whatever. That's what happened. They did my mama bad.
What'd they do to your mother?
They just had my mother, the white men. They just do what they wanted to do with them. And I just wasn't big enough to do nothing. If I would have been, I don't know, probably wouldn't be.
And this was in the 1950s or 40s?
That was on through the 40s, in the 50s, all through the 50s, and part of the 60s.
So what would the repercussions be if you tried to leave or if you tried to refuse what they wanted?
Back in them days, it was kind of like you had to do what the white man said or get killed. My daddy's uncle, he made him dig a grave and killed him. They killed him and buried him in his own grave. Jerry Dawson, they killed him. He lived around the same place we lived on. He left and said he wasn't coming back. They went and got him, brought him back, carried him right down there from his house, killed him. Hung him up in a tree.
They hung him.
They killed him first, castorized him, and hung him up right from his house where his children, everybody could see him.
Were you aware that this is 1940s, 1950s, that this is insane. Arthur, this breaks my heart to hear this story. Growing up, were you fully aware, this is in the 40s and 50s, you know, the civil rights movement is just about to begin. Were you aware of what was going on in the rest of the country at that time for black people pursuing freedom?
No.
You weren't aware at all that there was any pursuits for freedom in the 40s and 50s for us?
No, not really. Not really, because I think maybe like in 65, 66, then they was doing that marching. You know, that's when I really found out. The people are scared to talk about it. It's people right now, y'all go to talk to, they won't talk with y'all about this here. They're scared to do it. They got that fear in them,
How could something like this happen?
A lot of these places that was in very isolated rural areas, it was easy. I mean, you had the opportunity to ride through some of these areas and you saw for miles and miles, there's absolutely nothing.
You think, like, how could somebody not just escape these type of conditions? And once you actually are out here, you see there is nothing but cotton fields and crops and long strips of road where can you fathomably go? It's insane to see how you can be trapped on this land on so many different levels, whether it be economically, physically, and even mentally.
We're calling on the world in terms of righteousness, reparations.
Antoinette's work for Arthur's family got the attention of a lawyer in 2001, and they became part of a class action lawsuit for reparations. But ultimately, the Supreme Court refused to hear the case, and the pursuit for reparations has since been dropped.
How you doing, ma'am? My name is Antoinette Harrell, and I'm a historian. Hey, how y'all doing? I got a question. Can I ask you something right quick? The lady in the next block told me there used to be a store where people used to sharecrop or work on somebody's land. Do anybody know that story?
Is that how you do a lot of your work, just going out and talking to the community?
Hey, how you doing? Akil, come with me.
Yeah?
Did you ever pick cotton? Oh, yeah. It take me a whole day to get 200.
One of Antoinette's new cases took us to the Ball Ground Plantation to meet a man named Donald Jeffrey. Donald comes from 5 generations of sharecroppers who worked this same land under the Simrel family. Donald still lives here, along with the last descendant of the Simrel family, a man named Karsten. Today, Donald works full-time on another farm, but still lives rent-free on this plantation and does odd jobs for Karsten. So their living situation is unconventional, to say the least.
Why is Donald so nervous? Like, we're pretty inconspicuous right now,
Because
but wants us in secrecy.
I don't think he wants the boss man to see us here. Hey, Donald.
Hey there, Donald. Nice
How
to
you
meet you.
doing? Hey, good to see you.
My mama's daddy, when they come along in their time, they were sharecropping.
What kind of work was done on this plantation?
Everything fooling with cows, horses, and farming.
What kind of work did your mother do on the plantation?
She mostly did maiden work, did cooking. She told me at 14 years old, she started chopping cotton, and she would leave out the cotton field at 20 minutes to 11 and cook her dinner to have it ready at 12.
Why did you not leave the plantation?
Because it was home to me. And I love it here. It was a beautiful place. And I, just didn't leave. You're responsible for your light bill, but you don't pay no water bill or no rent. So, that's all. It works out.
So what is your relationship to this plantation?
Born and raised here, and Carson, he's almost like a brother to me. We have a real close relationship, a bond.
So There's a brotherhood between you and Carson. Like family.
Yeah, we are. That's right. We like family, sure is. We like brother. I can go right there now and spend the night in his house.
All the people that worked on this plantation, he refused to put them off. He would let them stay here.
Yeah, right.
And that's how you end up staying.
That's right, staying.
Do I feel like he's holding back some things? Yes, I do. But he lives here, and he have to stay here when I'm gone. And I don't want to put anybody's life in jeopardy, you know, because this can happen. I mean, you know, if you're talking about things that people don't want to be told. There's always someone that don't want you to talk about something.
That night, I spoke with Carson about his family's history on the plantation.
Hey there, Carson.
Hey there, what y'all got going on?
How's it going, man? Akil.
Hey
nice
there.
to meet you.
What
Nice
you
to
got
meet
going
you.
on?
Oh, thanks for letting us, you know, showing us around.
Yeah, man. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Come
good
on
to see
inside.
you too. All right, great.
Y'all want anything to eat or anything? Y'all want any beer? Coke, Cola?
It's fine. It's
7-Up, tea?
Oh, that's fine. It's fine. If we could just do a little tour, that'd be amazing, and just
Okay.
to talk a little bit about the history of
All right.
Ball Ground Plantation.
This is my wife, Natalie.
Nice to meet you. And then I would say the Semrel family goes a long way out here, right?
Yes. My family bought this place in 1899. So if I'm the 5th generation.
What is your relationship with Donald?
I don't even remember meeting him. Honest to God, we were childhood friends. No joke. I promise to God.
Are you related to this man right here?
Yes, that is my great-great-great-grandfather.
And what time period is this?
Ooh, that would probably be in the 30s.
This man right here was related to Donald, correct?
That's Eli.
What kind of work was he doing at that time? Was he just like a general helper for your great-grandfather?
Just anything. He'd just do anything. And if anybody fooled with him, they had a hell to pay.
So is he still with us?
Just like nobody fooled with them, so they know I will kill them.
Can you talk a little bit about the history of the land as well?
Back then, it was very little open land, okay? Because every home had their own little allotment, okay? Like, say that you were living on my farm, okay? Rent-free, okay? Seriously. Honest to God. I mean, who wouldn't do that? Shit. I mean, everybody else was charging their people.
Right, so they just worked the crops and didn't have to pay rent on this land.
Never, ever.
I was just saying, because Donald was explaining a little bit about his history and his
And
experience growing
sometimes
up
Donald's
here.
full of shit.
Oh, yeah?
And you don't have to edit that either.
So I see that there's some Confederate dollars here. Did your family have a lot of ties to the Confederate Army?
Not really.
Just had the currency? What misconceptions are there, do you feel, about the Confederate Army?
Here it is right here. You can read it.
The Southern Nation, the rise of the Old South.
It says the South was right. It was written by two Kennedy brothers.
This is about the South being right during the Civil War.
I'm not trying to push the book, but it's proven. I mean, you can talk to anyone.
We're in Vicksburg, Mississippi right now at the county courthouse where we're going to be looking at documents of Ball Ground Plantation where we met Donald and Carson yesterday.
Antoinette wanted to see if she could find any information on Donald's family before they were sharecroppers for the Semrels. Since most African Americans have no information about their lineage from this time, it can be an important first step in grasping that part of our identity. We started with his last name, Jeffrey.
So Antoinette is tracing the lineage of Donald, who has the last name Jeffries because his former slave masters had the name Jeffrey. Just like my name is Gibbons, it's formerly the slaveholder that owned my family.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeffries.
This is the estate. This is the personal property they own. So we want to hope that we find someone names in here. Okay, I need you to pull file 1101. Okay, come on, baby. You gotta be. Somebody talk to me.
Finding records like this is rare when you think about how black families were systematically separated, sold off, and then trafficked across state lines. Even finding one person related to Donald would be a long shot.
You found something?
I can't say that this is Donald's family, but there was one Negro woman and children for $850. Look at it for yourself. Oh, we have some names. John, $660. George, $650. Why is this important to me? Because when I'm doing Donald's genealogy, I will look for these names and see if his genealogy could connect me to one of these people. They had 5 mules, a plow, a sofa. In order to find anyone's family who was held as slaves, they have to look into the property inventory. So this can be very painful for people of African descent to do this. I'm looking at the expression on your face right now. You know,
Yes,
is this the first time you have seen a document like this?
Yeah, but you know, you understand the realities of our history, but to see it on a receipt listed, you know, from 1840s, I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Now that we had the names, Antoinette called another genealogist to run them through the National Archives.
Jeffrey.
Gotta look at all of them. Jeffrey.
We went through marriage licenses and found another relation named Belle Edwards.
Here's the so I can order.
Okay.
I can order that file.
We
Edward
have
Griffith.
Yeah.
Belle Edward.
Okay, Bernice, I'm gonna take a picture of something and send it to you right quick.
Okay.
We're trying to give Donald some of his history as a gift. There you go. I just sent you something.
So Antoinette, can you tell us what you just found?
I just found Edward Griffin and Belle Edwards was married in 1877. So this is Donald's ancestors. She might have found something. Hold on. Hello, Bernice. What did you find?
Isabella Edwards. They have the whole tree, plus they have pictures and everything.
I'm about to pass out. Girl, don't tell me.
Oh my goodness. Here it is, the Jeffrey tree.
Let me sit down.
That's crazy.
Here I am looking at pictures.
Wow, this is amazing.
89 people. Earl May Jeffrey, Maggie Lee Jeffrey Reed, Hawkins. They even have the cemetery.
Oh my God. I'm in tears. I'm really actually in tears.
I cannot believe this. Donald only knew.
Antoinette was able to identify an entirely new branch of Donald's family. She found that his ancestors could be traced back to Virginia, one of the first and largest slave ports in America. It's now up to Donald to determine what he wants to do with this knowledge. It's hard to know how to accept any of our history in America, but at the very least, even learning who our ancestors from this time were feels like an act of justice.
How do you feel about the work? You know, Antoinette's visiting different places.
I think that's nice. No, that's good. You know what? Y'all too. It's good what y'all doing. That's real good. It's good for somebody to know how people have been treated.
After the Civil War, we were, as African Americans, promised 40 acres and a mule to begin to have our own lives as Americans, but we weren't able to get it.
Weren't able to get it.
You think that if we were given reparations, that we may be able to fix what has been wrong?
It may not really fix it, but it would help. You know what I'm saying? It would.
I do know what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, it's just something that's kind of unfixable. You can kind of amend it back together a little bit, but it won't completely fix certain things. Killing my uncle, you know, make him dig his grave, and you know, just stuff like that. You know, you just can't fix that there by giving me a mule.
That's an entire piece of history that will be lost We need to do as much recording with people who would talk about it. A lot of people went through it, but they're afraid to talk about it. It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet. The more you learn, the more I dig, the more I find. Sometimes things are a little hard to digest. So I just do it because it needs to be done.
I'm gonna add this. This is why when the guy was talking to Maxine Waters a couple of days ago about reparations, she said, yeah, I'm gonna get that, we're gonna get on it, but we need to win this election. We need to get more Democrats. As if Democrat equals black empowerment. Like, that's the dumbest, most rudimentary argument. If you believe that, unsubscribe. Please do. Like, we don't have anything in common. But the thing is, man, like, they refused to hear the case, and I didn't make this point clearly. They refused to hear the case for black people that had been enslaved up until the 1960s. This is some fucked up shit, man. Like, there's no way around it. The reason they didn't want to hear that case is because if they just hear the case of the people that have been enslaved after 1865, through vagrancy and through all these little sharecropping, bamboozlement game that they would run, through all that, if they had to hear that case, that would be the end of them not being able to hear the other reparations case. They would have to hear that case, because then that would set a precedence, and they don't want that. So that's what this is about. Thank you.